People seem to be trickling in still, so I'll give people a chance to hop in. Probably should get started. Hi, all. Welcome to the CCC Kernel SIG meeting. I believe at this point, the most active discussion that's been going on externally has been, or going on around, is the discussion of FUKI and kind of bring your own firmware stuff. I don't know who is most excited to discuss this. I know Ani was interested in having a meeting last month, so I may give Ani or someone similar a chance to kind of bring up any questions they had or bring up any latent topics here so we can start a discussion. Since I'm not hearing anything, I'm not sure necessarily if there is anything that people want to continue to talk about. I can try to guide a discussion. I'm not as familiar with the details of what's going on most recently, so I might not be the most productive, but
So Steve, do you know who from Google is going to take over the Bring Your Own Firmware initiative after Diona is gone? Like either she's already gone or she's going to go away very soon. So,
yeah.
um,
So from the Google side, I think we're going to be really trying to find someone to take that over. She left quite recently, right? She left within the last week and a half. Plausibly, it will be either myself or Peter Gonda, but plausibly we'll need to find someone else new because we probably need to advocate it a bit to make sure this actually happens. We hire someone to do so, but we'll see. I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but
yeah, I mean, I think Diona connected me to her manager, and she did tell me that there is the Google is still trying to find the next person to take this over. The other thing is that bunch of us are going to be in Cavium Forum. God,
okay, yeah,
me, Alex, Vitali. So a bunch of us were interested in this bring your own firmware. We were thinking of adding having a BOF session. So if there is anybody from Google who is interested and is coming, that would be good to know so that we can connect and we can have the discussion there in
makes sense. Yeah, as a raw practical matter, Google has basically stopped sending as many people to a lot of conferences for a while, which has been deeply frustrating. We used to consistently go to KVM Forum, but for frustrating budget regions, we've kind of stopped, which is, I don't know what to say about this, but that's just a practical matter.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same for most companies, including Red Hat. Basically, if you have a scheduled talk, then you're guaranteed to go. Otherwise, um, all depends on the budget. So
Yeah.
Well, if you need a different budget, I can offer plumbers. We won't have a KVM micro conference this time, so we won't have all virtualization people. But we do have a confidential computing one, which this is very relevant to. And the CFP is pretty much open for a while if you need a presentation. The downside is it's in Japan, so we have been getting pushback about the cost of people going.
yeah, so the other one is FOSDEM, of course. Like every year they have a Cocoa track, but that's only half a day, and maybe not everybody goes to FOSDEM. So
Yeah, and FOSDEM's in February. Plumbers will be in December. It's sort of pick your dates.
Yeah. So do we have any concrete questions or topics we want to discuss today?
Hey Steve, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, Mark Gentry here. Not actually my first time joining this meeting. I've joined some of the other meetings. I do have some questions, but I have to admit that I haven't sort of read through the minutes and mailing list. So up to you. You can tell me to go read, or
I think you should probably just start with asking your questions, and if we know the answers and can answer them quickly, we can try to answer them here. If not,
okay,
because like,
yeah, just it's sort of high level. I was at Intel for a long time. I'm at Chase now. So yes, one thing is so right now I think in context of confidential computing, especially with CDN, well, primarily with CVMs, it's not exclusively. There's a guest kernel and a host kernel. Is there any and certainly the guest kernel needs to be hardened, but is it possible, and is the plan to eventually have the host kernel use the same kernel, or does that just fundamentally not work?
So are you wondering like if you can have symmetry between guests and hosts? I mean, I think for most CSPs this would be pretty unusual, right? Because it's like you want to have.
Well, I mean, it's even unusual for ordinary VMs.
Yeah.
Why would you want to share the guest and the host kernel in a VM?
Well, I mean, no, it's more from like it wouldn't be two instances, right? I mean, it's different. You know, like the guest kernel would be presumably mostly in private memory, but it would be from sort of a tracking standpoint, just to not have to have basically a fork of the kernel.
Right, but we tend to think of the cloud service provider use case, which is where customers bring their own VMs. So, I mean, there's no appetite among cloud service providers to try and mandate VM guest kernel versions.
Okay, that's fair. And that sort of leads into my next question, which is maybe a little bit removed from the charter of this group. But so I think, so coming from Intel, I know I'm assuming that attestation services like MAA and Intel's own service, they do a pretty good job of tracking the like the microcode versions, the stuff that the hardware manufacturer provides and signs, like what's been patched, what either SVN or hash of the up to date versions. But do y'all know where?
Absolutely not. So this
No,
is
okay.
a thing that this is what Diana was pushing for, to try and have a library of reference versions. So pretty much nobody has this library. So, and the versions, they're so mutable, they change so much, it's difficult to compute the hash anyway. The main problem with the hashes are you get one hash, the launch measurement, which consists of a bunch of things. And that hash is impossible to create unless you have the source code, the actual binary source of all the bunch of things that were measured. So it's very difficult to produce a reference library that will that you can go to and say, I've got this firmware, give me that, give me the expected hash. So the way everybody is currently doing it is we are just giving our customers the blobs to hash, and they can do it themselves, and they just verify from this what they get. And then we're into trying to do reproducible builds to prove that what we gave them, that the blob hash to, is indeed the source code they want to be looking at. That seems to be the best practice currently, and I mean, it's not very well implemented in the industry.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to build up to that. I tried to specifically say microcode is something that maybe is a little bit easier to track, but my real question was going to be about where things were, with respect to these, maybe generally speaking, third-party attestation services, so-called, are aware of all the measurements that are relevant.
So all the third-party attestation service does is confirm the attestation. It's up to you, and that basically says this hash is valid. It came validly from the confidential computing machine. It's up to the user of the attestation service to confirm that the hash that has been attested to is the one they were expecting.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's. Thank you. Now that's, yeah, and you would say that statement applies to, let's say, all the. I do still feel like there's some boundary between the microcode and sort of the special TDX module type firmware and the actual software, right? So I think I would assume that your statement, James, applies to all.
So confidential computing attestations do not include the firmware of the secure element that's actually bringing up the confidential computing, at least not the hash. There is a policy in there that includes part of the version number if you ask for it specifically. But if you look at AMD SIG, the launch measurement is pretty much exclusively all of the components the customer and possibly the cloud service provider put into the confidential VM. And it tells you pretty much nothing about the PSP, or what they now call the ASP.
Okay, so, but is that accounted for somewhere? How do you?
So there is a secure call you can do from a CVM on AMD to request a listing of the firmware version, and because it's a secure call, it doesn't need to be attested. It goes straight to PSP.
Okay. You're coming from my previous world, the Intel world. We were all about working, say, with Azure to coordinate updates and when we would consider microcode to be out of date and stuff like that. So I thought there was this sort of paradigm where we had the concept of a platform attestation, which was sort of the TCP components that are common to all the VMs, like microcode, and then the stuff that the customer ultimately is able to control.
Well, I believe TDX can do that. The case I was describing was AMD SEV, but the problem is that there's a lot of mixed architecture confidential VMs out there, and trying to attest to the version of the it's sort of the basic problem in attesting a confidential VM is the more crap you put in the hash, the more difficult it is to actually compute it and verify what you got. So most CVM launchers tend only to attest to the pieces the customer put in, because really that's what you care about. Is the VM I asked for actually the VM running in the confidential environment? Trying to figure out what the confidential platform is a completely separate problem.
I see. Okay, interesting. Yeah. And then on my last question, and then I'll go do some reading, catch up on mailing lists and stuff. But I don't know if Cedric Zing from Intel ever calls into this, and I can't remember what's the file system that we decided to do the attestation stuff with. It's not DevFS, ConfigFS.
That's TSM.
Yeah, TSM. So is that where any like computational computing related event logs live? Again.
So they're still discussing this. So originally the plan for TSM was for it to keep all the event logs. And I think at least Intel for TDX is planning that, possibly. But right at the moment, the patch that is upstream is only doing the RTMRs. So I don't think it has a mechanism yet for actually retrieving the event logs as well. I mean, pretty much an RTMR value is useless without the log of what produced it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I imagine that they are getting this at some point. And it looks like Huawei has a project to try and do the same thing for TPMs, which they're trying to do separately from the TSM subsystem. But we're trying to get them to merge. If they do that, we might have a universal interface in TSM for event logs, but this is a possible future, not a guaranteed one.
I see. And you said what company was the fork?
Oh, Huawei. Huawei just appeared with a patch on the Linux kernel integrity list saying, wouldn't it be great if I'm a log to RTMRs? And we said yes. And then they said, so here's a patch that makes the I'm a TPM subsystem variable. And I looked at it and I said, but isn't that what TSM is already supposed to do? And then they went silent. So I have no idea what the result of this will be.
I see. Interesting. Cool. And that's a great catch up and intro to what I'll start digging into again. Yeah, I think I'm sorry, the chair's name was it Steve? Sorry, those are my questions, Steve. If I get
no worries. Cool. If there's not other topics, I have one last topic before we go. But any other things people want to discuss today? The last topic I have is kind of wondering if anyone has ideas for steady state topics that I should start bringing up in this meeting in general, tracking particular things or discussing particular things. We don't necessarily need this. Typically what I'm trying to do with this is that I want to use it as a place where it's a kind of backstop for conversations that just need a place upstream between several companies and ensuring those conversations can happen in kind of a reasonable location. But if there are other topics or other things that should get emphasized here, let me know. I'd be very interested to know more of what people want from this. If people want to mention that now, that would be super valuable. If not, you can also shoot me an email for things or suggestions for this meeting and managing this meeting. That would be very helpful. Yeah.
Well, I can give you one. Tracking TDISP is getting to be an annoying pain for everybody. We could possibly do that here.
Yes, that is a thing I need to also do for my. I think. Yes, I agree. There are so many things moving so quickly right now. It's quite fast, and there's a lot going on. So.
You think TDISP is moving quickly? What are you seeing?
Sorry, I see like I don't read all the mailing lists, and I come back and I see there's like so many threads. Maybe I'm mistaken here at like the acutely in the last few weeks, but there's in terms of actual patch output, there's not actually necessarily that much. It's mostly
TDISP is like an inverted swan. It's sort of a lot of activity on top, but very little progress.
That would make sense. Yeah, because the number of like the insane number of dependencies for TDISP is I don't know how this is. It's like it seems like you need to align the stars to even get something to work, and you need so many components working at the same time for literally any forward progress. So yes, tracking TDISP doesn't seem like such a bad idea. Fair enough. Any other recommended topics or other things for down the line? All right, cool. Thank you all. Talk to you later and see you next month.
Bye, everybody.